Pony, I'm Fauna Joy, and for those who are not familiar with my DeviantArt account, I am a modeler of 3D pony models. And one of the most common requests that I get is for what I call copy-paste models, which are often also referred to as recolors. Also, forgive my stuttering, this is not scripted in any way. And so what I wanted to do was to create a tutorial for how to create a copy paste or recolor OC in Blender, which is, as far as I know, one of the most common programs used to make SFM pony models. It's a little bit daunting at first when you first take a look at the program, but once you know what does what, it's actually relatively simple. So what I have here is a list of programs and files that you will most likely want or need. The first obviously being Blender, which you just go to blender.org. For Sourcefilmmaker and Gmod, you will need the Source plugin tool, which will have a instructions on how to install it once you do get the files. You'll need a program called Crowbar, which is used to compile the model into something you can use in SFM and Gmod. You will also want Poninhaka's starter packs, which have Overhaul Females Release, Overhaul Pony source files. They're basically just the bits and pieces that you will use to create your OC. Now, these are actually relatively out of date, but they are the only source that I have found that has a large number of manes and tails from characters from the show, so you will want that. If you are only going for SFM, if you are going for Gmod compatibility, you may want Stephano's Enhanced Pack Gmod. And if you are not interested in Gmod and want to go just for SFM, you will want Aeridiccore. He has separate collections for mares and stallions. Filler Artist made a baby source pack if you want to make an infant. Aeridiccore also created a filly source pack. There are no source packs for the square-jawed colts that I have been able to find, so you'll have to make the feminine-looking colt if you want. If you're looking for something else, there is Beardeddoomguy's Source Files Pack 3, which has things like Celestia and Luna, Gallus, and a couple others. And this here is just other source files in general on a DeviantArt group called SFM Ponies. They regularly update with posters, models, source files. It's a really good source of pieces that you will want. There's also the website ponysfm.com, which isn't as thorough, but it is very nice to have as a backup, say if a DeviantArt account is disconnected for whatever reason. Now, you will want a program called VTFEdit, which will allow you to create the texture files that you will be putting on your model. Now, as far as editing textures, I personally use a program called paint.net. That is an actual program. It is not a website. I don't know why it's called that. One of the reasons, I will get into the reasons why I like paint.net later, but any photo editing program will do, such as Photoshop or even MS Paint. And obviously you will need Sourcefilmmaker, and I believe you will also need Gmod regardless of whether you are actually going to use it, because the two share a lot of compiling files that play off one another. And finally, you will want Notepad++. This is a program that is specifically made for editing coding files, which is what we use to put all of our pieces together. More on that later. All of these links will be in the description below, so don't worry about having to try and type all of this stuff in. So this is my basic layout for Blender. Things will not quite look this way at first. You can edit the way you want your window to look. You can also go to various tabs up here for different aspects of modeling or even animation if that's your thing. But since we are just using copy and paste today, I am going to go ahead and do as many different things as I can possibly think of that may be required, starting with importing. So you go up to File, you'll want Import, and Source Engine is what we want. Now this will just take you to a basic documents. You can favorite certain files over here that you can get to very quickly, and down here are some of the other files that you go to recently. You can see these are some of the ones that I have been working on. If they're grayed out, they don't exist anymore. So I have my stuff named model stuff. Categorize things however you want. This is how I do it. And we're going to be using Beardeddoomguy's Enhanced Celestia, because we are going to be making a character that I so creatively named Princess Copy Paste. So here we have a whole bunch of different pieces. The wings are closed and spread, and we have 2 pairs for each side. We have the mane, the mirrored mane, which, you know, is just the other side of her head, as well as, I believe, the tail somewhere around here. Yeah. Now what you want to start off with is anything that says reference, because that is the primary body of the model. It will take a little bit to load. My computer can be a bit faster than others because it's more expensive. I went pricey. So what I did just now was I pressed the numpad period button, which got me a general look at the model overall. So if you have a numpad, it is very useful for changing your view of the model. For 1, it takes you to the front. For 3, it takes you to the side. 4 and 6 rotate to the left and right. 8 and 2 rotate up and down. 7 takes you to a top over the top look. And 9 goes to the opposite of whatever you are looking at currently. 5 changes the way you view it. So for now, we have, for this moment, we have it just sort of how you would see it on camera in SFM. But to make things easier in modeling, I like to have the sort of pseudo 2D look. So now that we have the body, we're going to need some other pieces. We're going to go back, and because I have already accessed this folder here, it is brought up right away. Now, it is tempting to just select everything that you want or need and bring it right in, but that can cause some problems, which you will see in a moment. See, it's not obvious right away, but these bones right here are not supposed to be there. Those are supposed to be the ones that you control the wings with, so they should be up here. And so I'm just gonna back out a couple times. This will create a few extra steps, but it will make things much, much easier and much less of migraine inducing. So what you want to do is you still want to select everything that you need. And then go over here to the right of all of this, and you'll want to look for bone append mode. Right now it says append to target, which basically means adding everything to the same skeleton over here. That's what caused the problem, because they don't all have the same bones. What you want to do is click this drop down list and go to make new armature, which will make a separate skeleton for each of these things that we have highlighted. Again, it's going to add a few extra steps, but it's a lot less migraine inducing than trying to reposition those wing bones to where they should be. All right, now that we have all of these loaded in, we want to go up to the top right here where we can see everything that we have just brought in. So the difference between the object and the skeleton is pretty easy to tell. The objects have triangles right here that you can just use as a general identification for what the item is. Skeletons have these little person-shaped icons. And as you select each item, you can see an orange outline around it. So you know what is where. So what we want to do for these skeletons is we want to try and figure out which ones are completely redundant. So for example, anything that is basically just body pieces, has nothing to do with the wings, we can go ahead and get rid of it. We do want to keep the basic skeleton that we used with the original reference because that is our point of, well, reference. So now we have the wings. And as you can see, the closed wings here, they have just the basic shoulder mount bone for the open wings, which we don't want that. We want the whole shebang. If you need to hide something so you can see better, you'll want to look for these eye buttons. So for right now, we're going to hide the main skeleton because it's blocking our view. So looking at this, the open wing skeleton has most of what we need. It even has a few excess. And so what we're going to do is go down here into the bottom left to this little drop down list that says object mode. We're going to click and go to edit mode. Now these are what the bones look like when they are in edit mode. Oh yes, if you want to rotate your view, use the middle mouse. So what we need to do is double tap A to deselect everything, and then hit the C button, which will bring up this nifty little circle that you can make larger or smaller with the middle mouse, and then left click. You want to select the bones that you don't need. So for right now, I'm going to select the spine. Now, if you decide that you want to deselect something using this tool, you want to click the middle mouse button. So that middle mouse button deselects everything. And if you want to select multiple things at once, just hold the left mouse button. To get rid of the circle, you hit the right mouse button. So now that we have those bones selected, I'm going to hit the X button, which brings up the delete menu, and we just want to delete those bones. So because these basic bones are in the closed wing skeleton as well as this open wing skeleton, we don't necessarily need them on this one. So we're going to go ahead and select and delete those. If Blender will cooperate with me. There we go. So now that we've done that, we're going to go back to object mode. We're going to go ahead and hide those wing bones. You may notice nothing disappeared. That's because the wing bones for the other side are also still on. So that we can just straight up delete. We don't need it. And we're going to go ahead and do that for the extraneous closed skeleton as well. And so now we just go back to these closed wings, go into edit mode, and here we can see this just has the bones for the spine and the closed wings. So we just want to delete the spine. With all of that done, let's reveal these other skeletons. You want to come over here to the list, select one. You can do the top or the bottom, doesn't matter. Hold shift and then click on the last one. Now what we want to do is to put all of these together into a single skeleton. So we're going to right click, that will bring up the object context menu. Scroll down to parent. Nope, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We want to go down here to the object and look for join. You can also use Control J. So now all of these have turned into one model. And if we go into edit mode, we can see now that everything is on the same thing. But things are not quite what they seem, because now we actually have two sets of bones for the wings, so we want to get rid of those. What you want to do is what I did just now. I'll go back and redo it again. You want to click on one of the visible dots, hit the G button, which will allow you to move it, and then select this bar that appears, which will let you select the entire bone. And if you want to double check that that is the one you want the one with this little dotted line going down. And you just delete that. And I will repeat that for these other three. Again, if Blender will cooperate with me. Sometimes you will not be entirely sure which one you're clicking on. Like there, I clicked on the wrong one, so I will back out of that. It just doesn't want to work with me. So sometimes it will refuse to work with you, so you can go ahead and delete the one going up. I suppose I'm giving myself a little bit too rigid a structure by insisting on one or the other. Almost. All right. So now that that's out of the way, notice that these are all sort of floating in the ether, not attached to anything. What we want to do is we want to change their parenting. So you go over here to the right and you want to look for this little bone properties tab that has the little doggy bone in it. Now, right now there's nothing in there because I don't have a bone selected. Once you select it, this little list comes up. Transform is not really important to what we're doing. It's just the position of the bone on the general modeling scene. What we want is relations. And you see this little box that has the word parent next to it. You click in the box and it will bring up a list of what the bones are on the model. Wings are always attached to chest 2. No, they're not. You can tell I'm doing this in the middle of the night. They're always attached to chest 1. But this one in particular, since we deleted what it was already parented to, we want to look for left wing open 001. So we go to here, scroll down, and click on that, and you can see that little dotted line that just appeared. That is what we want to see. So now we go to the rest and parent them to chest 1, not 2, like I said earlier. That was my mistake. Like I said, this is not scripted. I'm going to mess up. All right, and now we have our base, but the problem is when you try and move things, they don't always move with the bone. And to do that, I am just over here in pose mode, so you can check that things are moving the way they should. Right now, it looks like the only thing that is going with the bones is that left wing, so we are going to fix that. The easiest way to fix that is to select everything, make sure that the skeleton has the light orange highlight and not the dark orange highlight. Now is where you right click and go down to parent, and you want to select armature deform with empty groups. You want this empty groups because these are already rigged. They already know where to go. They just need to be told to do it. And so now, if we go back into pose mode, the body moves with the head or with the skeleton. But it's not quite complete if it doesn't have a mane or tail, does it? Is it? So we're going to go back into import. And one thing that I found interesting to learn when I was first doing this was resizing and adjusting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to scale up and adjust a skeleton to fit the new model. And I'm just gonna go ahead and use a random main here. So now we have Flitter, I believe, and we have her skeleton, we have her mane, but that's not going to fit on Celestia all that well, is it? You know, it's just not quite fit for her. It's clipping through her ears, her horn, all that. And so what we want to do is, excuse me, select the mane itself, hit the numpad period, and then just sort of look around. You can hide the skeleton if it bothers you. I tend to do that. Now this looks like it's just a little bit too wide for Celestia for my taste. And so I will go into edit mode. Now when everything is orange like that, again, it's selected. You can double click A in order to deselect, hit A once in order to select all, or you can just click off into the nothingness in order to deselect. So if you want to change the size of something, you can just press S and you can make it larger or smaller as needed. You left click to set the size, or right click to set it back to where it was. So what I want to do, I don't want to scale the whole thing to a different size, because honestly the vertical length I kind of like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the left and look for these little boxes that highlight with the word scale. And you see these little control squares that have appeared. These are what you use to scale a model in a specific direction, such as this. And you can only do it on specific axes. Green is the Y, red is X, blue is Z. You can also do it on 2 axes at once by clicking the little squares in between the bars. What I want to do is I want to scale it down on the X axis a little bit. There we go. Now see, that's caused a little bit of problem over here. So I'm going to come up over here to the 4 arrows that say move, and I'm going to just move it a little bit to the right on the X axis. Now I believe that fits Celestia's head much better. And don't really mind if it clips a little bit like it is around here. Whoops. Okay. There we go. Helps to do all the right clicks. I don't mind if it's clipping right here, because usually the skeleton will adjust all of that for you. Speaking of which, notice things are a little off now that we have adjusted. You can adjust it with the skeleton, but that is a really complicated process. Yeah, for example, if I delete the skeleton outright, it just goes right back down to there. So, what I do, I go into edit mode, and it isn't immediately obvious, but there are names for these bones. You can see them right up here in the top left corner. So right now I have the Jiggle Hair 1 bone selected, and I want to find out which ones are named for parts of hair. So for example, hair back, Jiggle Hair 3. And I want to select anything that is part of the body, such as the ear, mouth, all that fun stuff. And just delete those. So now what I can do is just select these pieces, move them back within line of the mane, and that will give you an idea of where to put the mane next. Because it doesn't always cooperate with you. See, for example, there I just joined things together, and now Celestia is floating in the air. That's not what we want. And I keep doing that, I don't know why. And see, the mane has gone back to where it was before. So we just need to make those adjustments that we did just now. All right. That looks good to me. So the bones, the skeleton, they primarily tell it where things are positioned. You can also do posing with it, as you might have guessed with the way I moved Celestia's head around like a snake. But primarily what you will be doing is setting things so that they are in the correct relation. I did not want to go into pose mode. Now, like with the wings, we're going to need to reparent things. Most jiggle bones will be attached to something base, like this one on the back is attached to the hair back. And the hair back needs to be attached to the head bone, because once it is attached to the head bone, then it will move with the head. You can see the bones are moving, but the mane is not. There's a reason for that I will get to in a moment. So this is jiggle hair 2. We do not want that to parent to the head because it is attached to jiggle hair 1, which we do want to attach to the head because that is the top of this forelock here. All right, so as we did earlier with the wings and all the other pieces, we want to parent this. Now I'm going to show you what happens if we do with automatic weights, because you do not want to hit that if you are just trying to copy and paste, because it can cause issues. Yeah, there we go. It's moving with the ear and we don't want that. So I'm just going to back out and parent that properly. And I just like to double check things to be sure. Yep, there we go. The ear is moving on its own. That's what we want. All right, and now she needs a tail, which is a very similar process. Let's also go with floater, why not, for consistency's sake. So one of the other ways that you can adjust things with a mane and tail is you take out the pieces you don't need first. Now here we have 3 sets of bones: the right hip, left hip, and the pelvis. The pelvis is what the first tailbone will attach to, but you don't want to keep that on the tail because every reference model has one. So the other way to adjust things is to go into pose mode, select all of the bones. Oops, there's a straggler down there. What are you doing here? Yeah, some models have these random bones that are on the bottom. I don't know why they don't do anything. I just always automatically delete them when I notice them. So what we do, again, select the whole thing, use G to move it to within an approximate position. And those wings are getting in the way, so I am going to go ahead and hide them. And I feel Celestia should have a bit of a bigger tail, so I'm going to scale the tail up. Now, we want to go to the model of the tail itself, go into edit mode. Now see there, it went way down. It went back to where it was before. So what we want is to click this little wrench over here, which will take us to our modifiers list, which is just a bunch of things that you can do to adjust the model, the mesh itself. What we want is we want to add another armature. Now the object is tail flitter skeleton, which, as you can see, the size has been doubled. Now we apply one of those, go back to the tail, go into pose mode again, click the pose tab down here, and apply. We want to apply posed as rest pose, which will take things back to where we want them. They both of these methods seem to be, about the same amount of time. Whichever one you want to do is up to you. And so now we join the two skeletons together. I seem to have a habit of just right-clicking when I don't need to. And as we see, things are not posed, though I still had the ear pose selected, so that was kind of funny. Things are not weighted, things are not rigged. So click the tail and parent with empty groups. There we go. Since we added the tail separately, we want to go into edit mode, select the tail 1 joint bone, go into the list, and we want to scroll down to look for the pelvis, because that is where the tail is always connected. Everything seems to be ship shape now. We have just about everything we need in order to put this together, but there are a couple more steps. In order to get the proper skeleton rig for your new OC, you want to hit the button I and then select location. That will tell it to add the, where are you? It doesn't want to show me. Of course, all of this is happening when I'm trying to. All right, yeah, here we go. This little thing down here, and okay. All of these are mesh, which is what we use for the primary pieces that make up the body, mane, and tail of the pony. Down here, this different looking symbol will bring up a little dialog box, which will be what generates the file you need in order for your model to have an actual skeleton. And the easiest way to name that is, instead of using this long name, is call it a ragdoll. Now you can see everything I have here is currently slated as going out as DMX. That's because this is enhanced and it has the face flexes on the model itself, which the basic ones that we started with did not have. They had a separate file. We no longer are restricted to that. So you want to come to this little scene properties tab that has the trio of symbols. I can't figure out what they are supposed to be. And you want to hit this little folder next to the red box that says export path. This will bring out, again, your documents. And I like to put things in specifically named folders. I'm going to put this in the tutorial folder since that is what we are doing, and you will see that the name will pop up in here. We only want to export the body as DMX. That's the part I have highlighted here, because Crowbar especially can have some problems with everything else, with just about everything as DMX. So to properly export DMX, you need to go to the DMX version, turn it to binary 3 model 1. I will be honest, I'm not entirely sure why all of that makes a difference. It just makes things a lot less migraine inducing as usual. So click the little blue box. When it pops up, you want to export just the enhanced DMX. The scene export we will get to in a moment once my computer wakes up. There we go. And so now we want to export everything else as SMD. To make it really easy to change your selection, you want to go down to select and invert, which will select everything else. And of course, I always forget this, but if we are going to make a Gmod compatible model, we are going to need one more thing. So we want to go back to the enhanced Celestia sources, and we are looking for something that may not actually be there. Okay, yeah, I wasn't aware this didn't have what we were looking for. Okay, I'm just going to pull up what we need. So if you are making one from the Aeridiccore models, you want to go into File Model. And I have found there really isn't any difference in the length of tails as far as whatever File Model you choose. So I just will click on that, and you'll get this funny blocky looking pony. Now these Phi models or physics are what you need in order to actually use this in Gary's mod. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete its skeleton, because all skeletons are really the same at their base for Phi models. So all you really need to do is scale it up and align it close enough. And then parent, empty groups as always. I like to rename the piece before I export it. And so what we do is we double click on its name and just type in what we want to name it. And now, if you want to deselect something in the primary viewport, you need to click it twice until that orange outline goes away. And now we want to export selected objects. Now this should be all that we need to do in Blender, but there's always something that may go wrong, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize for now. That is a cracked article I was reading. And now we are going to go into the folder that I made for this process. I call it the tutorial folder. And you can see all of the files that I just exported. We are missing one more piece. And so I'm going to go ahead and open up a second window, go into Bearded's source files, look for Enhanced Celestia, and over here you can see the different kind of files. There are DMX, SMD, and QFC. The QFC is what we want. So I'm just going to copy that over into here so we always have these for reference. To make things easier, we're going to rename it. And this is where the program Notepad++ comes in. When we open it, it will bring up this wall of text. Now you can see here it has lines for a VTA, which isn't actually in here now that I look at it. So what we want to do is we want to select and scroll down quite a ways until you see the line that says body group horn. We want to go to this little bracket just above it and delete all of that because it is unnecessary with DMX. Whoops. Sorry, I just knocked my microphone over. One moment. And we're back. Okay, so now that we've done that, I am going to sort of undo something that I did just now. And I'm going to put one of those little fancy brackets back in because these brackets indicate when one piece of code starts and when another one ends. And they are vital. So what we want to do, we want to come up to model name. Most Pony SFM models start with VN or VJ, depending on who made them. I honestly don't know why. And so I'm just going to name this one Princess Copy Paste. And you always want to leave the .mdl after the end because, again, that tells it what to do. For the name of the model, we want that reference that we used. So we want reference enhanced TIA. I like to just copy and paste the name in there and then add .dmx after it. And here we have all of the pieces that we need. So Studio tells it this is where the piece is going to go. And if you want multiple pieces, you can use either 2 lines of Studio, for example, for spread wings or closed wings, or Studio and blank for things that you want to be removable. And since we are using different manes and tails, we need to take a look at what these files are named, main flitter and tail flitter. Go to the correct line, select and delete the primary text, and rename it. You always want to have these little underscores in the primary files that make up your model, otherwise it will not be able to read it. So you either want an underscore between words or no space. All right, so continuing down the list, we have the materials lines, which are the lines that tell the program where to look for the textures. And since we are not making a Celestia model, I'm going to go ahead and delete those. And what I want to do is tell it to go to the folder models OC/copy paste. Now the second line here is for things that, as it implies, are common, such as tongue, teeth, eyebrows, those kinds of textures that every single model uses the same thing for. Skin families you will generally leave alone because this is what allows you to change the eye size, or in the case of fillies, whether or not they have their cutie mark. So, for example, if you want to make an OC who, is a filly or colt who gets their cutie mark, you can start with body or body marked, whichever one you want. But since this is an adult pony, we are just going to stick with the eye sizes. Now here is where that ragdoll we made earlier comes in. You'll notice that over here there is a folder called anims. That is where the ragdoll file went. And so in order to tell it where to access that, you want to select the name and write anims/ragdoll. And here you can see why I renamed the physics the physics piece, because it is just way simpler to remember that than whatever all of these are. Now, physics and the stuff below it are for Gmod. Generally, you will not touch them because the template QC files that you use will have everything that you need. And so what you just want to do is save that and open the program Crowbar. Now I already have things set up, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do it. You'll want to set up games, and it will bring up this list that you need to go through. So the executable, you want to find this application. Now most of it will be already set to Gary's mod, and so what you want to do is you want to look for your Steam apps common, and you will get a list of any Steam games you have on your computer. Look for Gary's mod, or in this case Sourcefilmmaker, game, and the primary executable for SFM will be in that folder. For these other folders that it needs, for example the game info.txt file, you will need to go to Sourcefilmmaker game user mod. There are times when the file that you need is also in Sourcefilmmaker game bin. Now these files will always show up as an app, will always show up when you go to the window you want, and it will tell you on the original layout what you are looking for. So now we go to compile, and you want to have the output to the games models folder. You may need to tell that where to go. I said browse. Okay. Okay, now that I think about it, I believe that sets it up automatically once you tell it what game to use. So that's not something you need to worry about. So now we want the QC input onto file, which is its default. Go to browse. Now this took me to a folder that a model that I made earlier. I'm just going to go back to my work in progress, look for tutorial, and there's copy paste. And so that is the path that I am looking for. And I click compile. You will get a wall of text, and oh no, something went wrong. So, could not load file. Okay, let's see what went wrong here. Reference TIA enhanced DMX. So sometimes it might need to be re-exported. Ah, okay, I see what this extra line here is unnecessary. So let's save that. And hey, we're away. So you will get this incredibly long line of text. And again, something has gone wrong. Looks like it was a problem with one of the files. Ah, so see, it didn't rename the model for physics. So I'm just going to go ahead and do our good old friend copy and paste, because sometimes that's just what you got to do in order to get things to cooperate. All right. Third time's the charm. And it is perfectly normal for it to scroll through and then pause like this. It's just thinking. Wait until things go back to the way they were before. Again, on some computers that are not quite built for this kind of heavy work, it may take longer. And it says check above for any errors. Generally, when it says that it has actually finished and not abort process, that means it has finished without errors. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a program that I like to use in order to preview my models. It can be a little difficult to find. I constantly have trouble trying to find it when I'm looking for it when I'm first installing things. So we want to go to Steam Library, Steam Apps, Your Steam app's maybe somewhere else. Mine is in Steam Library. Sourcefilmmaker, game, bin, and then we're looking for QDSK launcher. And so you just hit Q and it should be somewhere near the top. Open that, and this little list will come up. You can use it to bring up Sourcefilmmaker, the Hammer editor, which I have never used and probably never will, and what we're looking for now, the model viewer. So it will bring up this window called Half-Life Model Viewer. You want to go to File, Load Model. And again, it took it to the last known file that I accessed. And this is just a list of files and models that I have in my user mod folder. We want to scroll down and look for copy pastes. But she's not showing up. That's because I called her Princess Copy Paste. And there she is. And yep, I did this on purpose because this is what it looks like when your textures haven't come through. Kind of trippy sometimes. So what we want to do, we will go back to our tutorial page because I have a couple of reference files here that I need. Go into user mod, materials, models. I like to keep stuff like original characters in a separate file called OC, but most files will go into VNMLP. If that is what you want to do, go right ahead. And this is the list of OCs that I have made. We want to make a new folder called copy paste, but I should double check that I didn't call this Princess Copy Paste as well. Nope, it's just copy paste. Okay. So we go into there, copy what I need on over, and now we are going to go into the VN and VJMLP, if I can click the right folder. So first we're going to go into VJMLP because that is where the Celestia pieces are. So you'll see this list of files. You will see two names for each. That is normal because they are separate types of files. There's Valve Material File and there's Valve Texture File. We will get into those in a moment. Now, since we are using unique mane and tail, we do not need the hair and tail files. So we'll just copy that on over. And now let's go to VNMLP and look for flitter. There we go. So now we want her hair and tail files. Again, especially when I'm making copy and paste OCs, I like to copy everything instead of moving it. That way I have things at my access whenever I need them, especially if we need eye colors. And since Flitter has these separate eye color files, we're going to go ahead and copy them over here so I can help you figure these out. All right. Now, I like to sort things by type because it just helps keep things nice and neat. We want to open the Valve Material file, and you will see, again, some coding text, which is perfectly normal. You want to rename these files same way you did the primary directory in the QC file. Now, I like to leave the light warp stuff alone because you will be usually borrowing from stuff that is in the common or primary file for the pony you have. You can move everything over if you like. I just prefer to leave that alone. I will fast forward through this part, so bear with me. One more tip before I do the fast forward. Things will go a lot faster if, again, you copy and paste. So I had decided to pause instead of fast forwarding while I was doing this, but I realized I need to specifically mention the eye textures. Now you will notice in the material file that there is eyeball left and pupil left and right for. And down here there are eyeball files which just have a teeny tiny little white speck there. That is for the whites of the character's eyes. And so most ponies do use that same file for the eyeball color, but if you wanted to give it a different color, for example, the Lion King models that I made, they had yellow eyes instead of white eyes because that's how they were in the Lion King movies. So you would want to just make a, doesn't matter what size, but usually they're tiny to save space. Just you would want to make a separate eyeball file. Okay, I have everything renamed. I do want to bring really quick attention to the eyebrow and eyelashes files if they are in what you copied over. Do not be afraid if you don't see any file paths, because eyelashes and eyebrows are almost always just black, and so this is just letting it know by default have the black color. So now we're going to get into the texture editing portion, and this is where the Valve texture files come in. So this is Celestia's body file. We want to go up to File, Export, and you'll want to navigate to the same file path as all of these. And see, it created a paint.net image file or a TGA file. And that is one of the reasons why you will probably want paint.net in order to edit these, because to my knowledge, okay, never mind. TGA is the default file that it makes, but you can make them as JPEG or PNG. I just have never done that. So I'm going to pause again while I export all of these. You will not need to edit light warp files, or in case of Celestia, mask files, because they stay the same. They are basically files that tell the program how the texture interacts with the environment around it. So gold light warp makes things shinier. Mask, I honestly don't know what it does, but it's essential because it will not cooperate if you don't have that. Okay, we are back. I have everything we need exported here. Now the TGA files will take you automatically into paint.net as seen here. But for other files, you will want to load them in. And just let it go through that progression. So to edit a body texture, you are going to need a cutie mark, which I thought this little copy paste symbol was rather appropriate. Now, I like to generally get a good idea of how big the cutie mark on the reference is. So I'm going to zoom in. And this is my method for figuring things out. You might have a different one, but I like to go up right to the edges of the cutie mark. And crop it in order to get a general idea of how big it is. So this one is right around 300 pixels. So we can check to see about how big this one is. And it's 300 pixels. So I already copied it. Let's go ahead and paste into new layer. That will bring it up just like this. And you can, what I like to do is I go ahead and copy what I put there, paste it into another layer, a third layer, go up to layers here, and then flip horizontal, since cutie marks are typically mirrored from each other. And generally it's not that difficult to try and figure out how to place them so they're as close as possible to each other. That looks about right. So before you go into any further editing, what you want to do is make sure that the cutie mark is going to look right once you have everything said and done. So merge the layer down till there's just the background, and then save it. Do not close the window. Now we're going to go back into Half-Life Model Viewer. Things are still pink and black, but if we go up to File and hit Refresh or F5, give it a few moments, and there she is. So for the moment, it's just Celestia. But what we want to do is we go to the body texture file, go to this little white piece of paper that says import, select the body TGA file. Again, give it a moment. This little window will pop up, and it may take a few moments for it to actually load. Body textures tend to be the largest piece because it is, well, the largest piece of the model. There we go. And so if you want to double check, you can see there are those cutie marks. You want to save, and you will replace the body file. Now go back to MDL, Model Viewer, hit refresh, and there we go. You can see that cutie mark doesn't quite fit well with Celestia's butt. So what I want to do is go back into paint.net, undo the merge downs. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and undo all the way back to the original cutie mark image that I made. And I'm going to go ahead and scale it down a bit. Right smack dab in the middle of the sun. Copy, paste new layer, flip horizontal. You may have noticed there is quite a bit of tedium in this. But if this is the first thing that you are doing, it is well worth it. It took me a while to get to the point where I was making fully custom models, but I would not trade the time that I was making copy-paste models for the world because it was a real learning experience. Now don't be worried if it says not responding like that. Again, it's just thinking, and Windows is weird. Just don't click anywhere, give it a few minutes. There it goes. Now anytime you load in a new image, it is going to say untitled, regardless of whether you opened a file or not. You just always want to save it for the corresponding piece. And see, there we go. That is much better. Not quite perfect, but hey, this is a tutorial. We're not quite going for perfect. So now we'll head back, undo the merge layer down, and you can do the colors however you like. Since this is a copy and paste, I have decided that I want to go off of paper and printer colors, and so I'm using the paper color here in my reference file. What I like to do to get rid of the original cutie mark is select a large rectangle like this, go to the paint bucket tool, and turn the tolerance up to 100. That was on the wrong layer. And there we go, that's what we want to see. Now you click finish, and what you want to do next is hit this little button up here that says deselect with the red X, because otherwise, regardless of whether or not it actually says you did it, it will not let you edit outside this selected box. I constantly forget to do that, so don't be upset if you do. And now we want to change the rest of the body. I like to have it about 27% tolerance, because that tends to keep it from overtaking the facial features. Now what you want to do for facial features, such as the mouth and nose, is just make the next color a little bit darker. Now see, that is too similar to the color I was already using, but that's okay because Paint.net is really intuitive and really clever, so you just want to turn the tolerance down until it's back to where you want it. And the nose. And this pink part is the inner mouth, and the discolored ring outside it is basically the inside of the lips. I tend to use this pink part as a reference for where to put the cutie mark, as well as, you know, the cutie marks themselves, because it's just a really good jumping off point. And so now we're going to merge all of this down again. Save. Again, do not close it just yet. You never know when we might need to make more adjustments. Refresh. And I did that wrong. I only just realized that. I was sitting there waiting for it to refresh, and I forgot one of the more important steps. I am doing this at 3 o'clock in the morning, so forgive any derps. Also, apologies for any background noise. My sister is watching YouTube on her computer in the other room. And that was my dad's cell phone. And hey, look at that, when you do the steps right, things actually work. What a concept. And so, now we're going to move on to the rest of the body, because this is done. I'm going to go ahead and close it now. And I'm going to apply those same colors to this file, which is the horn texture. We want these smaller lines to be the darker texture. And I am going to go back, get this, and redo these lines. There we go. Save that. Now, as I said, I'm doing this at 3 in the morning, so I have missed a piece that actually makes things easier. You have two colors down here. If you left click, it will select the primary color. Notice that that just changed. Right click, it will select the secondary color. And so now that we have those, I can show you some other things. So this is the hair texture, or the mane texture. Mane and tail textures will look very weird at first. And what I want to do is make things kind of like the, test page that I am using as a reference. And so I am going to keep the tolerance relatively low and go fill these lines in. Now, when you have a secondary color, if you want to use that instead of the primary one, again, just right click. Now, you will be tempted to hop over and just select the new color, but if you have not finished what you were doing, it will affect the other window. So we're going to undo that, hit finish, and go ahead and select that color. Now, because these textures can be unwrapped so oddly, I like to double check things the same way I did with the cutie mark. And so I'm going to save the hair texture, import it, now because the hair is smaller, it took less time, and then save that. And now we're going to go ahead and refresh to see what effect that had on the model. Now see, there we go. What I did, changed the back of the hair, and it's a little difficult to see, but you can tell that things aren't quite lined up right here. Most people, you probably won't care, but for the sake of consistency, it is best to try and match things up. So, looks like it is these small ones that correspond with each other. And I just clicked on the same color. Again, 3 in the morning. There we go. Alright, and I'm just going to do this in bits and pieces to try and get things lined up correctly. Alright, and refresh. Alright, see, we have the magenta stripe is now connected correctly. We just need to swap around the blue and the yellow. If I am reading things correctly, that means this goes yellow, this goes blue. Yep, there we go. Things are now much more well aligned. I think I will go ahead and change this stripe to magenta to just give it a little bit more uniformity. Where'd you go, Paint on It? There we go. Okay. Refresh. And there we go. Nice magenta stripe. So now we need to match these colors up with the top half of the mane. Some models will have a separate piece for the front of the mane and the back of the mane. For example, if you look at Twilight, you will notice that the front and back of her mane are two different pieces. Those will sometimes have separate files for the textures called usually mane front or mane back, or hair front or hair back. In which case, sometimes trying to line those up can be really migraine inducing. So looking at this, I'm pretty sure these should be blue. This, I believe, should be magenta, and then these yellow. Let's see how that looks. Go ahead and save it. Refresh. Nope, not quite. Need to switch around the yellow and magenta. Oh, stop that. I don't know if your computer will do this. I think it's just a quirk of mine. So let's swap those around. Now, on occasion, you will get this last little bit that refuses to change color. That's because of the tolerance. You can go back and change the tolerance if you like, or just fill it in like that. In fact, I think I am actually going to go back, change the tolerance, because sometimes it can spill over a little too much. All right. And there we go. That looks fairly complete to me. Things seem to be lining up nicely. All right, so that is the mane. We want to do something similar for the tail. Now you'll notice this one has one piece to the mane and tail. That is the wrong thing. There we go. And so what we want to do is we want to try and figure out what points meet where. So one of these is the tip of the tail, one of these is the base of the tail. In which case, it's probably best to have the base of the tail, or the outside edges, I should say, blue, to try and figure out where they meet up. So, yep, down here, these pieces are all actually connected. So we'll go ahead and undo that. And I like to use the line tool to fix little things like that. So just zoom in, select the line tool. About 10 pixels as far as the size tends to be enough, or too much in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down to 5. And yeah, that's pretty close to seamless. And then just repeat for the others. So you can do a quick zoom out by clicking this little button here. And I'm going to do that. Grab magenta and go ahead and put it in these places. I think I'm going to go ahead and make the rest. You're making a lot of noise over there.
Hand stuck to my chair.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and make these pieces blue for the sake of consistency. All right. Always remember to import. That is a very important step. Ha 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 ha. For example, I haven't imported the new horn yet, so we are going to do that as well. Those are imported, so let's go ahead and refresh. And again, we haven't quite gotten the colors lined up. So we need to swap one side of the magenta and yellow again. There we go. So editing textures is generally fairly easy. It's just a matter of, as always, figuring out where things line up. And Paint.net, I feel, makes things infinitely easier with their finish option, because then things aren't quite so difficult to back out of. All right, and so there we have our tail painted. And so next we're going to go ahead and change the wings, which, much like the eyeball, is just a teeny tiny little texture. If you aren't so sure about grabbing it, you can just zoom in all the way.
Go back to bed.
Yeah, clicking that button doesn't work for these. All right, so we're going to go grab our main texture for from the horn. Fill that in. Now you can make textures for wings with gradients on them. They are very difficult when it comes to the very, very tiny textures like this one, but it is possible. You just gotta make sure to have things just about halfway like that. So we'll see how that looks. Okay, let's take a look. Now, as you can see, her wings are primarily dark. I think it is difficult to tell because we are using two very similar colors. So I'm going to go ahead and go back and change the gradient colors. There we go. So now we have black and white. So we're going to adjust that a bit so there's more gray than anything. Now you can go ahead and close stuff that you are fairly sure you're done with by now, just to declutter things. That would be my sister's cat. She likes to talk. All right, and let's see how this looks. And see, there you go. We actually have a really nifty effect with that. And so I think I am actually going to keep that. That is kind of cool. But, you know, things will not always come out that nice. So there may be times you'll have to just give up on the gradient effect. All right, and now let's take a look at the eyes. The eyes look pretty much the same for left and right. If you notice, as I'm going back and forth, there's just a tiny little shift in the pupil. And so if you want to change eye colors, for example, if I just wanted to go with this magenta color, it can be a little difficult because eyes are usually a gradient. But you can just use the paint bucket tool for just about any piece you want. Usually there are a lot of eye colors available, so you can find what you are looking for. Unless you have something completely unique, then you're probably going to want someone else to make that eye texture for you, because it is going to take a lot more than just the paint bucket tool. I will say though, if you paint outside the iris like this, it's not usually the end of the world, because the eye and the pupil textures are separate for a reason. It is what allows the eye to move and look around the environment. So let's yeah, she has a pink sclera now. However, if we turn on eye look, it just makes it so that the part outside the iris is pink. You can change that by changing the eyeball texture as well, but I don't generally recommend it. So I'm just going to go ahead and undo that there. Okay. So looking at everything, that should be what we need to, all we need to do. If you want to edit the accessories, it's basically just the same thing that I have been doing this whole time. I just noticed that there, but I'm not going to bother because it's, you get the idea. And so last thing I want to do is just load it up in Sourcefilmmaker, which you can access from that same launching program that we use to pull up the model viewer. As usual, this may take longer on other computers, as this is a laptop that it was designed for heavy graphics and program use. And even with my computer, it tends to take a little bit. Especially when loading maps. And this is a simple map. So like with most of these programs, don't be upset if it takes a while. Okay. And there she is in all her regal glory. So I hope this tutorial helped shed some light on how to make a really simple copy and paste OC. If you have any questions for me, go ahead and post them in the comments. Most things that may come up are generally easily fixed. If you want to learn how to edit a mesh, I just generally recommend looking up Blender tutorials, because there are so many more people out there that can explain things better than I have, especially at 3:30 in the morning. So thank you for tuning in, and good night.